Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me on the channel today. I'm Ted Yacucci, and this is my first video posting in 2026, so I just want to take a second to say I wish each of you and your families a happy and a healthy and a wonderful, blessed 2026. Thank you for being part of our community here on my channel. Well, there's an interesting gentleman who you've probably never heard of. His name is Clayton Butler. And Clayton Butler was only 900 feet away from the murder of Officer Tippit at 10th and Patton Street. Clayton Butler was at the Dudley M.U.'s ambulance service and funeral home at 400 East Jefferson Boulevard, which it was only around the corner from 10th and Patton, about 900 feet away. Now, what's really interesting is that Officer Tippit had had coffee that morning at the Dudley M.U.'s funeral home. They often provided police escorts for funerals from that funeral parlor, and they were all friends, and a lot of officers would meet there for coffee on a regular basis. So they knew Officer Tippit very, very well. So when Officer Tippit was shot shortly after 1 p.m. on November 22nd, there was an ambulance service only 900 feet away. And in those days, there was no 911 emergency call. So when Domingo Benavides, who was the closest witness to Officer Tippit's killing, as soon as the killer kind of moved away out of the area, Domingo Benavides got on the radio, Officer Tippit's radio. He called into the Dallas Police Department, which immediately relayed the call to the Dudley M.U.'s funeral home, and an ambulance was dispatched to pick up and service and try to help Officer Tippit within 60 seconds. And it, again, 900 feet. It was there within 2 minutes of the call coming in. Now, this is really, really important. It's so unfortunate that Officer Tippit was wounded so severely and really finished off with a shot to the head by the murderer, because the ambulance was able to get there so quickly, so that if it had been lesser injuries, his chances of survival, may have been vastly increased. But the important thing about all of this is that because that ambulance got there so quickly and removed the body of the body of Officer Tippit from the scene, we can look forensically and with facts at the story of the officer who said he was the first to respond to that scene, a reserve officer named Kenneth Kroy. And we can look at what he actually did, what he couldn't have done, even though he said he did, and what the Warren Commission never even bothered to ask him about. And of course, you may already be aware, one of the things I'm talking about is finding a wallet that supposedly belonged to Lee Oswald. And Officer Croy said he found that wallet, and pictures were taken of that wallet, and the identification of Lee Oswald and someone named Alex J. Hidell was found inside that wallet. But yet, the wallet will somehow disappear. And the Warren Commission will never even ask about the finding of that wallet, even though there's photographic evidence. We have a lot to get into, and I think you may hear some facts that you haven't been aware of previously. Let's get into it. So to quickly reiterate, the call comes in from Officer Tippit's car radio from Domingo Benavides, the first and closest witness on scene to the murder. He calls into the Dallas Police Department The call is immediately routed to the Dudley M. Hughes ambulance service, and driver Clayton Butler will respond, driving the ambulance to the Tippit murder scene. He will report that he got there between 60 and 90 seconds after getting the call at the Hughes ambulance service. Now, this is where the story really gets interesting because there's no doubt that Reserve Officer Kenneth Kroy was on the scene of the Tippit murder. Now, he says that he got there in time to watch Officer Tippit being placed in the ambulance. Okay, here's proof of that. During the Warren Commission testimony of Reserve Officer Croy, Griffin asks him, says, "No, I'm just referring to the street you found him on when you got there. Was Tippit's car there?" Croy says, "Yes." Griffin asks him, "Was Tippit there?" Croy says they were loading him in the ambulance. Griffin asks, "Were there other officers on the scene?" Croy says, "None that I saw." And then Griffin says, "Well, what did you do when you got there?" Croy goes on to say he started interviewing witnesses. Now, this is such an outright lie that it's actually easy to prove in two ways. Because Officer Croy was on scene, but he didn't drive up there. He had always been there. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But here's how I can prove it. All right, number one, if he had driven up in his own car and was the first officer to respond to Officer Tippit's shooting, well, then where was his car? It was never seen in any photos of the Tippit murder area anywhere. Now, think about that. If you've heard that an officer has been shot, an ambulance has been dispatched, you're going to the scene, there's no other police officers there, you would normally pull up right next to the car, right, to get out. Why isn't Officer Tippit's personal car, which he says he drove there, in any shots? Why is it not in any pictures of the murder scene? Because he was lying. He didn't drive it there. He was already there, which again, we'll get into in just a little bit, I promise. Now, how else can I prove this? I said there were two ways. Well, the other way we can prove it is that the Warren Commission never asked him one question about it. Well, when you arrived on the scene, where did you go? Where did you park your car? What was the first thing you saw? Where were you in relation to Officer Tippit? Where was your car? Who did you see? All of those things which they ask in exquisite detail to Officer Croy and everyone else, they totally refuse to ask Officer Croy. You can't accept the fact that Officer Croy drove his car, was the first responding officer, and then expect an inquiry like the Warren Commission not to ask about it. Where did you park? Where was your car? Why don't I see it? Where is it? What the heck happened to your car? So that's two definitive reasons that we know Officer Croy was lying, but there's so much more. We've gotten to the point where Officer Kenneth Kroy has pretended that he arrived in his own car at the J.D. Tippit murder scene. Actually, he was there all along. But the ambulance has come and has loaded Officer Tippit inside and taken off. Okay, what happens then? Other officers start showing up. Some of the witnesses start coming forward, and a little bit of chaos, as you can imagine, right? But what happens is that Kenneth Kroy will suddenly say that he found a wallet that he will hand to Captain J.R. Westbrook. Now, J.R. Westbrook, Captain Westbrook, if you've watched my video on the overall murder of Officer J.D. Tippit, you know a lot about Captain Westbrook. He was later outed as a CIA operative, and when he left the Dallas police, he went to Saigon in Vietnam as a CIA consultant to the South Vietnamese Police Department. Okay, so there's no doubt that Captain Westbrook was a prime player in the assassination operation. Nobody has pointed this out better than researcher John Armstrong, who has done just a phenomenal job in relaying not just the minute to minute details, but actually a lot of the overall details to tie things in between Westbrook and some of the operatives that worked along with him. Number one being Reserve Officer Kenneth Kroy. All right, when we go back to the Tippit murder scene now, okay, so after the ambulance has left, other officers, of course, are showing up in droves. Well, what happens? Officer Croy says that he found a wallet and he gives that wallet to Captain Westbrook. Captain Westbrook will open it up and he will find identification inside of two people, of a Lee Oswald and an Alex J. Hidell. And Captain Westbrook will proceed to ask a lot of the other officers, hey, have you ever heard of Lee Oswald or Alex J. Hidell? And no one has, right? So this is just such an obvious a plant of a wallet that they can use to further demonize and make guilty Lee Oswald, as they will come up with the story that he shot Officer Tippit. All right. So what really messed them up was that the wallet of Lee Oswald, the real wallet, was taken from him on the ride from the Texas Theater to the Dallas Police Department. And inside were a number of, documents, nothing to do with an Alex J. Hidell. It was just the identification of Lee Oswald, his library card, and some other stuff. So it wasn't until Captain Westbrook took the fake wallet, the planted imposter lying wallet, back to Dallas Police Headquarters, that he took two pieces of identification and placed them with the contents of the original of Lee Oswald's actual wallet. After that, sometime between about 1:30 and 7:30 on the night of the assassination, November 22nd, the fake wallet, the imposter wallet, simply disappears. It just simply disappears into thin air. Westbrook just got rid of it. Okay. Well, he could have gotten away with it, except for one thing. There was photographic evidence of that wallet. And we have here a picture that was taken by news reporter Ron Ryland, and the photography is of a Captain Doherty and a Sergeant Owens as they examined the second wallet. And Westbrook actually, it's reported that he asked FBI agent Bob Barrett if he was familiar with the names Alec or Alex Hidell or Lee Oswald right there in the field. Okay. So we have photographic proof that there was a planted wallet, a fake wallet, which Westbrook and Croy were going to use to implicate Oswald in being this Alex J. Hidell who would have ordered the Manicure Carcano and the whole 9 yards, right? So they had to get that false information, that false identification into Oswald's real wallet, which had been taken from him on the ride from the Texas Theater to the Dallas Police Department. So you figure, well, that's got to come up with a Warren Commission, right? But it doesn't. Once again, the Warren Commission will not even bring up that a second wallet ever was discovered at the Tippit murder scene. All of the officers there were asked about it when Westbrook was going around asking if anyone had ever heard of a Alex J. Hidell or a Lee Oswald. Everybody knew about it, but the Warren Commission, once again, proven that it was a total sham, never asked Westbrook or Croy or anyone else about the phony second wallet. We will also find out that Reserve Officer Kenneth Kroy just happened to be present in the basement of the Dallas City Jail on Sunday morning, November 24th, and that he was the closest officer to Jack Ruby, and that Jack Ruby actually brushed past Officer Croy on his way to shoot Lee Oswald. Now, that is an absolutely incredible coincidence. In part two of this proving conspiracy in the murder of Officer J.D. Tippit, we're going to look at further at Kenneth Kroy's actions in the basement of the Dallas City Jail just before Jack Ruby killed Lee Oswald. And we're also going to look at further testimony of what he said he did in the half hour between the killing of John Kennedy and the killing of Officer Tippit. And we know he didn't drive his own car there by what we proved earlier in this video, but we're going to look at the lies that he told and what he really did to end up between the houses just to the right of the car that Officer Tippit was murdered in. Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm going to have that second part two out in just a day or so. So, I think we're going to be able to, I think it's a little easier to do it that way than try to put too much detail in each of the singular videos. Thanks so much for being with me, and we'll see you next time.